If you're looking for maximum control out of your MTW, then the BLINC or Bluetooth integrated control board from Wolverine Airsoft might be just what you're looking for. From custom profiles to auto dwell tuning, it puts everything that you might need at the tip of your fingers. So we're going to take a look at the installation and operation of the BLINC FCU on today's episode of What the Tech. If you got MTW with the BLINC pre-installed in it, then you can look down in the video chapters and go straight to the section about getting started with the FCU. Also, if you don't already have the app, you can find the link for getting that downloaded down in the video description below. So let's get right into it. So to get started with the installation, all we're going to want to do is separate the upper from the lower receiver. We'll do this by just removing our front and rear body pins and then separating the two and just guiding your airline out. Pull out our wiring harness here. Take some sort of a tool and I'll punch the front trigger pin out of the receiver here. And I'll just pull it out from the back. At this point, the trigger board should simply slide right out of the lower. You'll want to know that some older style trigger boards might not have a slot here, and they'll simply have a hole more like this one. And if that's the case, you'll also need to remove your trigger pin. If your trigger slid to the side when you pulled your old board out, push it back towards the left-hand side of the receiver here if you were looking at it from the back. And next we can just take our FCU. We'll slot it down at the receiver just like so, around the trigger pin, and then we'll want to make sure when we install the board itself that it goes down good and straight. We wouldn't want to catch the bolt catch switch here on the side of the bolt catch and damage anything there on the board. So just make sure you push it down nice and straight into the receiver. At this point, I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure on top of the board. I'm going to install my front pin with the slot going in first and just guide that through. Make sure that you don't pinch your wiring here. And then on this one, there's going to be a little arm on my trigger spring that I'm just going to push out of the way to the side here. Then I can guide my pin in the rest of the way. The last thing I want to do here is simply take my wiring and guide it back to wherever I want to run it, whether that's in the grip or in the stock or however you prefer. Now that we got the lower receiver done, we're just going to go ahead and move on to the upper. I'll just want a small tool to pop my contact yoke up out of the receiver here. And then you can take that same tool and just hook it around your wires and pull them right out the back. Pull out the front clip on the engine here. Yours may look a little different depending on what generation of MTW you have. I'm just going to take my new contact yoke, which is the one with the little PCB on the top here. I'll guide that down right next to the solenoid. I'll push the engine towards the back just a little bit, and that'll make it super easy to plug in the new contact yoke. Slide the engine back to the front again to line up your slot here for the clip. We'll just snap that down in place, and then we will take the contact yoke, making sure that all your wires are out of the way. You don't want to pinch anything here, and then he will just snap down right into the back of the upper. Pull the body pins back out of the lower here. I'm gonna go ahead and push the front one down through, slide my airline back where it came from, and then I'm gonna make sure not to pinch my wiring here, just tuck it down out of the way, and I'm just going to close the receiver back together, push in the rear body pin, and that is a complete assembly. The first thing I'm going to want to do is just take a 7.4 volt battery of some kind. I just have a mini LiPo here. I ran my wiring through the grip, so I'm just going to go ahead and plug that in, and you'll hear the board beep, letting you know that it is turned on. At this point, the gun's ready to go. You don't need to do anything else to get out on the field and play with this. If you're familiar with our Spartan electronics at all, then the way you tune this will be very similar to that. You can just do tuning through your trigger. So basically out of the box, it'll be ready to go in what you would expect, which is just semi and full auto. But if I wanted to, I could just hold down the trigger here with it set in the semi-auto position. You'll hold it for about 5 seconds. You'll hear it beep like it did there. And now you'll see that it is set in semi 3-round burst. These are what we call profile slots, and the board's going to come preloaded with 5 of them on it. So generically it will be on slot 1, which is just semi full auto, but it will also have semi 3-round burst, semi 2-round burst, semi and 2-round burst full auto right out of the box. So if you want to get playing with this with no app at all, then you're good to go at this point. But let's admit it, we're here to take a look at the Bluetooth functionality of this board. So let's take a look at how to connect to the app. So to get started, we're just going to go ahead and open up the app. So have the Wolverine Airsoft app here. Let's go ahead and hit the plus button down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Next, I'll just hit the little magnifying glass to search for the board. And I don't see anything coming up. So to turn the Bluetooth on my board, I'm just going to hold down the bolt catch.
2 seconds later.
And you'll notice that it shows up here on the search page, and I can just hit add. Next, the app will prompt you to change your selector switch position. And once I do that, I've now connected to the board. You'll see here on the home page of the app, you'll just see my devices, and you'll notice that your board is just right here highlighted in green, showing you that you're connected, just has a little green border around it, and I can just go ahead and tap on it, and it should open right up. First thing that you'll see right here on the top left is it just says 0. If you have a chronograph connected to the app, when you start firing your gun, they'll actually read your velocity output, whether it's the joules or FPS or meters per second or whatever it is you're using, it'll just cover it right there. And we'll take a look at how to connect to a chronograph later on. So the next thing you'll notice here is just what looks like a bolt catch symbol. And if you tap on that, that'll just change you from traditional to simplified empty mag detection settings. And we'll take a deeper look at that later in the video. The next thing is that you will see just a battery. Nice to have your voltage right there. This will update live and just let you know if your battery's dying. You don't want to get out on the field and have your board die on you. The next thing is just the selector positions. So we have semi and auto selections here, and you'll just have your rate of fire as well as your different modes for both the semi and the auto position. And we'll take a look at that here in a second. And finally, we have the dwell. If you wanted to change this, you could just tap on it. You could hit the plus and minus buttons. You could also just go into the menu itself by tapping on the number and changing that to whatever you want. Now, there's a correct way to set the dwell though, and we'll take a look at that here in just a bit. So now let's just go ahead and take a deeper look at the selector positions here in the app. So you'll notice that we just have our semi position and our auto position, and we could just, currently we are in semi and 3-round burst. You'll see the little number 2 up here in the top of the app. So we're in slot number 2, which generically is going to be semi 3-round burst. But if I was to swap over to the next slot just by holding down the trigger again for about 5 seconds with it in semi, beeped 3 times, so that lets us know that we're in slot number 3. Slot number 3 is going to be semi 2-round burst. So maybe for whatever reason, I don't want slot number 3 to be semi and 2-round burst. So all you would need to do if you wanted to change this would be to tap where it says mode on the semi position, and I'm just going to change this to 10-round burst. And then maybe I want my full auto setting to be binary. So I could go ahead and do that, and I'm just going to hit apply to make sure that I save this to the board. And now we are in a 10-round burst and binary mode, just like we would expect. Another thing worth mentioning is that the rate of fire here on the semi-auto position will affect our rate of fire on our burst. So if I was to turn this down to 3 rounds per second, we would now have a very slow 10-round burst if I hit apply. And it's worth mentioning that if you change your rate of fire here when you're in binary, that's not going to do anything to your rate of fire. It also wouldn't change anything if I was in semi-auto and changed my rate of fire either. It's going to just be semi-auto and binary like you would expect. But if I was to change this to a 2-round burst or back to full auto, changing the rate of fire here on the selector position would make a difference. just like it did a second ago on my 10 round burst. So now I'm on my slow 10 round burst and 30 rounds per second on full auto. So now that I've set my settings, I kind of like where I'm at, and I want to save this so that I can use this in the future. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit save down here in the bottom of the app, and I'm gonna create a profile name. For this, I can just hit OK, and that will save it. So up here in the top of the app, there's a little hamburger menu. I can tap on that, then I can click profiles, and you'll notice here that I have my profile that I just created. Maybe for whatever reason, I want this to be profile number 1. So all I'm gonna do is hold down my trigger with it in semi-auto again to cycle back through my profile slots. And cycle to slot number 4. You'll see it change in the app, just like you'd expect. And cycle through 5 and all the way back to 1 here, just by holding down the trigger each time for around 5 seconds. So now I'm back in slot number 1. So if I wanted to load the profile that I just made a second ago into slot number 1, all I would need to do is click that menu, go to my profiles, and then I could just load the profile right here. You'll notice that it changed my settings. I could hit apply, and now profile slot number 1 is a slow 10 round burst and 30 round per second full auto. It's also worth mentioning that each time you save a profile, that your dwell, your rate of fire, and your fire mode will be tied to that profile. One of the next cool features we want to talk about is how Ace-Tech products like this Bifrost Bluetooth tracer here integrates with the BLINC control board. Now this is going to work with any of their Bluetooth enabled products like the Bifrost BT that I have here, but it also works with some of just their big chronographs as long as it's the Bluetooth version, and some of their other tracer chronos as well. We're going to simply take the back cover off and then just hit the power button here. Next we'll just hit the add button, and then I'll hit the magnifying glass here in the app and it shows up right away. So all I need to do is hit add, and now it tells me that I need to hit the power button 1 time, and you'll see here back on the My Devices page that it just shows up right there. So now that we have the tracer connected here, we're just going to hop in the app. I'm just going to click on my gun here, and the first thing I'm going to do is just go up to my little hamburger menu and drop down to the tracer settings. So once we get in the tracer settings here, we'll see that there's some different options. We have the chronograph, we have the tracer, and we have the flamer, and we can turn all of these on or off inside the app here. So if I wanted just the tracer, I could do that. And something to know about this though is if I go to turn on the chronograph, you'll see that it automatically turned off both my tracer and my flamer. Now, this isn't a bug. This is actually just the way the system works. With the way these tracers are designed, due to the nature of them with the lights inside that are used for both the flamer and just the other lights that are used for illuminating the BB if you have your tracer on, those lights actually will end up interfering with your chronograph reading and just not giving you accurate readings. So if you want to use the chronograph, you will have to have both those turned off, and you'll see that the app just does that for you. So if I was to go turn the flamer back on, you'll see that it just automatically will turn my chronograph off again. And there's some other features to these chronographs. You can control the light patterns and the colors and all of those things. And if you want to do that, you'll want to just do that directly through the Ace-Tech app. So I'm just going to turn on my chronograph and we'll take a look at what that will look like for you. So we'll navigate back to the home screen, and then I'll just fire a few shots. And you'll see here that up in the top corner of the home screen that you have a little readout, and this readout is your chronograph. You'll see right now that we're on meters per second, but if we were to tap this little button here in the center, I could change it to feet per second, to joules, and then back to meters per second. The next super cool feature that we can do with this chronograph connected is this. We'll jump back in the menu here, and we will jump down to Auto-Tune. So the app's prompting me to hold down the trigger, and I'm just going to start by simply doing that right now. All right, so you'll see that once we are done with those steps, the gun will stop firing, and then we'll get one of the values in our column here highlighted in green. And you can see what the app's done is it's just fired a series of shots, slowly stepping down the dwell until it saw a shot where the velocity drops and just keeps dropping after that. And at that point, you know the gun's under dwelled. Now, something that's cool if you've messed around with dwell a lot and want to adjust your values based on what you see is you could just tap one of the other columns before you hit apply. But if you're pretty new to HPA, you'll be great to just stick with the default value that it goes to here. And if you want a deeper explanation about what dwell is, you can find our What is Dwell video linked down below. So now that we have our value, we're just going to hit apply. It says apply success, and that's all there is to it. We can just jump right back out of the menu and you have your dwell set. I'm going to jump in here to the random sampling tab and turn random sampling on. Now, what this is going to do is one shot out of every 30 you fire. It could be the first one or the last one, doesn't really matter. It's just a random shot out of the 30 that you fire. It's going to chronograph that shot and just list it right here. So let's take a look at how that works, and then I'll explain what that is for. So if I was shooting away, you'll see here I just ran out of BBs, but during the time that I was shooting, it took 2 random samplings of my shots. And what it has done is it's just listed out the velocity of those shots here. And if I was shooting all day and I was connected to my app, it would just keep track of that right here in the app. This is just a really cool feature to kind of be part of the solution instead of the problem. You know, if you have somebody out on the field who's thinking you're shooting too hot or giving you a hard time or something like that, it's just a cool feature to stay accountable and be like, hey, look, you know, during the day, I took a sampling at, my timestamps are the same here since I was shooting super close together, but it'll also give you a timestamp and a date for when they were. And you could just be like, hey, look, all day I've been consistently shooting at the same velocity. My gun's not shooting hot. One other thing that you should know about this is that if you turn random sampling on, if you have your tracer or your flamer turned on, when it does that, it will randomly turn that feature off for that one shot and turn it right back on. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the tournament lock feature. So to get to that, we just again go to where the settings are up in the little menu there, and we'll just open onto a page with the green lock just like this. So right now it shows that it's unlocked, and at this point I can change any of the settings on my gun and it's not going to change anything. But if I tap this, you'll hear the board beep, you'll see the lock change red, and it'll say no change to electronic settings since, and give you a timestamp. If you are to change these settings in any way, it will turn the tournament lock off. Say I was to change this to 22 rounds per second and apply that, then go back to the tournament lock tab, you'll see that the tournament lock has turned itself off. So again, if I turn this on and I change something through the electronics themselves, like going to a different profile slot, I would just hold down the trigger. And now I'm in profile number 3. But if I go to my tournament lock, you'll see that changing the electronic setting turned the tournament lock off, just like you'd expect it to. Another feature we haven't taken an in-depth look at yet is the different empty mag detection modes. So the way that this works is in the app we see that the little bolt catch is highlighted green currently. So if I was using this gun normally, you'll see that the gun is firing, but as soon as you have an empty mag, it'll stop firing just like you would expect it to. You could drop the magazine, load a new one, but you'll notice that the gun still doesn't fire until you hit the bolt release, at which point it'll start firing again. But if we go ahead and toggle this over from traditional mode to simplified mode, then you'll see that the gun could be firing. Once you run out of BBs with an empty magazine, the gun will stop firing. And as soon as you load a new mag, the gun will start firing again without the need to hit the bolt release. And that is the different empty mag detection modes. One of the last things we're going to take a look at here is the settings page in the menu. So if we tap on that, we'll just see some different settings here. The first one is just the board beep. If I turn this off, It's going to do exactly what you'd expect. Now when I change settings on the board, I won't hear it beeping at all, but if I turn that back on, you'll hear the board beep, just letting you know that it's been reapplied. The next setting that you'll run into is the stiction compensation. What this is going to do is if you have a gun that seems like it's a little sluggish or just shooting a little strange on the very first shot and then it's totally fine after that, you may want to consider turning this up just a touch. It's going to default to 5. The next thing is the BB weight. We already took a look at that and how that affects the chronograph. And the last setting that we have here in the menu is the select fire threshold. So with it just the way it is right now, I could go ahead and hit the little refresh button. And with it in full auto, you'll see that it's giving you a select fire value of 76. Now, if I put it in semi, it's giving me a value of 5. And you might wonder, what the heck are these values? Well, the way this board works is it has an optical selector on it. So what that's doing is reading light and dark. And so with it in semi-auto, it's reading 5, and with it in full auto, it was reading 77. So these values are just going to change depending on what this sensor is saying. If your threshold is set higher than the highest value that it's reading, you are not going to end up changing successfully into a different selector position. So right now, where I'm working correctly in semi and correctly in full, if I was to set my threshold higher than the 77 that it's reading in full, then you'll notice when I go into full, it's not reading that high. And so it's just stuck in semi right now. So what you'll want to do is, if you're having issues with your selector switch not accurately reading for whatever reason, you'll just want to set it somewhere between the two values. So it was reading 5 in semi, 76 in full. So maybe I could just go ahead and set my value somewhere right between those, set it somewhere around 40, and then it'll work perfectly fine. And finally, the last thing I want to cover is the factory reset on this board. Whether you're having an issue with the board or you just want to clear the settings and put it right back to how it was, this is actually very straightforward. So to do this, I'm just going to separate my upper and my lower receiver again, pull out the airline, and then all that I want to do is disconnect my battery, take a small piece of metal or wire. For me, I just have a little paper clip here, and I'm going to stick this in these top 2 gold pins on the board right here. Plug my battery back in. You'll hear it beep 3 times, and then your board is reset to factory defaults. Hopefully you found this video super useful. If there's anything that you feel like we left out, you can drop a comment down below. You can also start a ticket with the tech department if you're having an issue that we didn't address in this video. They'll be happy to help you out. If you liked what you saw here and want to see more great content just like this, don't hesitate to go check out the channel, maybe drop a follow while you're there. So thanks for watching, guys. We will see you out on the field.